Hi, this is Dave from Henricus Historical Park. I'm a historical interpreter at Henricus, and as part of our remote learning series this week, we are highlighting herbal medicine in the 17th century. And what I thought I'd do today is kind of conduct a little woods walk in the property near my home and kind of go through some of the forest land and see if there are any native plants that we can discover that would have been used in traditional herbal medicine, both by the Algonquin Indians living in Virginia and also by the later English colonists that came to the area. And so we're going to walk around and see what types of plants we can find. Now, the Powhatan Indians who lived here in Virginia actually called medicine wissakan. The English recorded that as their word for medicine in general. It may have also specifically meant something that was bitter tasting, which of course most medicine tends to be, or some sort of enemetic, basically, a type of medicine that was meant to purge the system. Things such as pokeweed and jimson weed seem to have been used traditionally. They are semi-toxic plants, not something that I would ever recommend anyone do today. But they would have been used to help to cleanse the system in Powhatan culture. So that is the type of plant that we might look for in particular. But we're going to be looking for other types of wissakan as well, other types of medicines. The first one that I want to point out that we found here is American holly. American holly is very prolific in this part of Virginia, and the berries of holly are toxic as far as we understand. Birds sometimes eat them, but they cannot be eaten by humans. However, in traditional herbal medicine, the leaves of holly are sometimes used to make a type of tea. Holly tea was traditionally used in folk medicine, I should say. And so you would simply boil down those leaves and use them to infuse the water. And we do have some evidence that in Powhatan healing practices in the 17th century, holly leaves would have been used to infuse in water that would then be sprinkled onto ill individuals as part of that spiritual healing process. So that is the first plant that I want to highlight as a form of wissakan that we're looking for today. So let's move on and we'll see what else we can find as well. Ooh, here we go. So I think that this is something called liverwort. Liverwort, I think there are about 7,500 different varieties of liverwort. It's a very prolific type of plant. It usually is something that's sort of mossy. There are scaly varieties and there are hairy varieties of liverwort. And I think that this might be one of the hairy varieties right here. And liverwort is recorded by the English as being collected by the Powhatan Indians, and it was typically chewed up and then actually put onto wounds, open sores, things like that, sort of to act as a type of poultice to cover over the wound and help it to heal, probably keep the bacteria out. So I believe that this is one of those varieties of liverwort. There's no way to know what the variety of liverwort was that would have been used by the Powhatan Indians specifically, but this is certainly one possibility. So it's kind of a hairy, mossy type of plant, but I could certainly see how that could be ground down and used as a poultice. So that's our next discovery here, and we're going to keep moving and see what else we find. Okay, so guys, what we have here is a typical American oak. There's different varieties of oak, but white oak in particular was favored by the local Powhatan Indians for use as a medicinal. Not the tree itself, but the acorns are recorded, and there's still a few holes of acorns here. These aren't going to fruit and actually drop new acorns probably until later this year. But acorns would have been gathered when they fell, and the English called them monohominy. Basically, it's a type of acorn oil. When you would actually grind the nuts into bits, and then you would use most of the meal to make flour. You would then boil the hulls and get the oils out of those hulls. And the English record that that was used to make a type of ointment, basically. We don't know exactly what it was meant to cure, but they do describe that the nut ointment was kept and would be used to actually produce medicines and so forth. So they would have gathered those acorns and extracted those oils for that purpose. And they do record that it was a particular type of oak that was favored. It may have been white oak. They describe it as a lighter colored oak than other types of oak. So that is one possibility. So that's pretty, of course, oak's very prolific here, just like holly. So that is certainly something that would have been typically utilized. So let's keep moving and we'll see what else we find. All right, so guys, the last thing we've come across here, I think this is something called shadbush. Shadbush is a type of shrub or small tree, and typically it grows reddish purple berries. Those are not in fruit yet, but they probably will be later in the season. And we don't have evidence that the Powhatan Indians specifically would have utilized shadbush. There's no recorded accounts of that. But it is a native Virginia plant, and it is something that in traditional folk medicine, again, was often used for all sorts of cures. Supposedly in folk medicine, this could cure all sorts of ailments, though there's certainly no scientific basis for that I'm aware of today. But this was something that in folk medicine was very commonly used. And the berries are actually considered a wild edible, so they are collected by certain people even today, just as sort of an alternative to blueberries, things like that. A lot of the plants that we've been looking at are also considered wild edibles as well as medicinals. So this is something that may have potentially been utilized by people in the 17th century in Virginia as a form of home remedy for different things, but we don't have any specific documentation of that. So that concludes our woods walk today. We found about 4 different native Virginia plants that would have potentially been utilized in traditional folk medicine or herbal medicine. And I hope it's been interesting to you folks. And we'll be back later this week with some additional information and updates on different types of herbal remedies that were used in 17th century culture. All right, I hope you guys have a great day. Bye-bye.